Moira loved adventure and spent many years traveling all over the world in search of it. Over the years, we traveled extensively in Africa, and this is the story of our times in East Africa. Dar es Salaam is one of the main ports on the east coast of Africa. We often spent time at the Seacliff Hotel with the Maasai doorman and beautiful swimming pools. We were once stuck here for 45 days waiting for a project to start. It was very pleasant, but it can be a little bit boring if you have to wait too long. We had this very nice house in Dar es Salaam with Moira's car parked outside. A RAV4, which she really liked. She thought this was a very pleasant car to drive. We had a gardener called Dominic, and he was good for the garden, and then we had a maid called Letitia, who came every day. Moira asked Letitia to come in her native costume and with her hair done up so that she could take photographs. Letitia also brought along her children one day to meet Moira, and we had a lot of fun. We also had an Askari guard who would come along each night and sit outside as our security guard. I also had a house up in Shinyanga near Lake Victoria with a security guard and gardener. The gardener kept the garden very well maintained. On another project, we had this house at Mtwara down near the Mozambique border. We also had this company plane which we used for business, but we also could take it away at the weekend if we wanted, and we would fly to various places, resorts and places like islands off the coast. This is not a security check, it's actually just to see that our shoes are clean after a day in the game park. We took all our shoes off and piled them up towards the cockpit. Flying up to the site, we would fly over Mount Kilimanjaro in the clouds below. Sometimes we would go out driving, and this is more in the rainy season, passing through some deep mud holes. One time we went into the Ngorongoro crater, and the guide insisted on driving my Land Cruiser, and he got us stuck in this mud hole. On another occasion, we were driving and we got stuck in this ditch, and it's very hard to get out of this even with four-wheel drive, but we got a lot of help, came to get us out, and eventually along came a tow truck and they pulled us out with the oxen. On another occasion, cycling through Africa, this is Moira, halfway between Cape Cairo and Cape Town, looking good. When we came up behind this line, Moira said, "What will I do?" And I said, "Ring your bell." So here we are passing the line as a joke. On another occasion, we took the airplane and went up to Gombe Stream Park where the chimpanzees were, and we spent a weekend up there, which was very pleasant. This is the area where Livingstone met Stanley, or Stanley met Livingstone, and uttered the famous words, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." East Africa was a source of slaves for Arabia, and this is Bagamoyo. They built a church over where the slave market used to be. Dar es Salaam was a very pleasant place on the harbour, and we would go out sailing regularly. It was very pleasant. As you sail around, you see a lot of dhows because the influence of the Arabs is very prominent here. It was very pleasant to socialize on these boats, and there was always lots of food and very good company. I found this flag and I wanted to claim the country for Her Majesty. Moira having a chat with one of the fellows. The beach life was very good, but as they say, you shouldn't wear your Speedos if you can't see them. Moira liked the fishing and she was quite successful. She actually caught this fish, which was very tasty and most enjoyable to eat. On another project, we were down in Mtwara near the Mozambique border, and there was a very nice restaurant there. We used to have to entertain consultants that came in, and there was always consultants coming, and as Moira used to say, they were our playmates because we would have such a good time with them. This fellow would come by our house selling shrimps, really big shrimps, and very tasty. It was rather amusing because this is how he weighed them. In the main street in Mtwara, there was a little Indian store where we used to do our shopping, and that was one of the sources, but we also used to shop a lot in the market. and we got very good fresh vegetables, and it was always fun to go there. Some local women doing their handiwork at the market. It's a very shelving beach, and when the tide went out, the women would go out to collect seashells, and it was always very nice. You could walk far out when the tide was out. People love the beaches, and these are the kids having fun. The water is lovely and warm, and it's very pleasant. There's a young lady with her very small baby, and Moira loved the shells. There was always shells available. It was very pleasant when the tide was out. It was nice, but then when the tide came in, it became into kind of a mango swamp. There were trees in our garden that dropped berries that the kids would like, and they'd ask our permission to come and collect them, and they'd scoop them all up, and they were very grateful. Some young kids in the garden after they'd picked their berries, and then this is a young lady on the road as we were driving along. Some young kids in the village. There was always a lot of fun to interact with these people. They were such a jolly people. There are some women doing their maize in the traditional fashion and doing their weaving and grinding their corn. I would take photographs and get prints and go back to try and find the people. On my first project, I spent a lot of time driving around the countryside, and it was so nice to meet these people. They're so colourful. Moira entertaining some young kids up near Shinyanga. And then with the Maasai, we use Maasai as security guards because they're very fierce and everybody else is scared of them. But they are very nice people, very friendly, and very interesting culture. One of the things the Maasai like to do is to jump, and they can jump very high and straight up. It's incredible to watch them. They seem to hang in the air. Here's one beside this lady, and he's just levitating. They thought they could teach me to jump, but we can soon prove that a white man can't jump. Maasai villagers going about their life, and all their people gathering for a party. Taking his kids along for a ride on a fallen tree. Another fellow with a goat in a case in the back of his bag, and then there are people with chickens. There's chickens inside the basket and above the basket. I don't know who's got first class and who's got second class. And then a fellow taking his cotton to market on the back of his bicycle. These are bicycle taxis. It's very common to have bicycle taxis, and these guys will take people for a certain fee. And of course, Moira had to try it out, and she was amazed at how fast he could. I came across these people, and they were tilling, but they were tilling to the beat of a drum. They beat the drum, and then they all till in unison. I took some photographs of them, and then when I took the prints back, I could no longer find them. I never found them again. East Africa is a great place for game parks, and there's nothing more pleasant than to go to a game park and stay in a tent. But these aren't ordinary tents. They've got beds and ensuite plumbing. Some of the sites have also got swimming pools, and it's nice to sit out by the swimming pool, but you've got to be careful who's looking over your shoulder, because these are warthogs that have come up behind, and they're rooting around. Warthogs are somewhat unique because when they're grazing, they always graze on their knees. Game viewing is always pleasant. These are zebras. There are many different varieties of zebra. There's a great variety of game in the parks, and it's very pleasant. These are gnu's, and they gather in herds, and there's always one stands on a high point as though on a lookout. These are wildebeest, very strong animals, and they gather in large herds. This is a kudu, and it's reputed that because it's got the one horn, if you look sideways, it looks like a unicorn. Here they're getting up to no good, and a little bit of activity in the middle of the group. Then you get the larger animals. These are giraffes, very interesting. They can eat thorny branches from the higher trees, and they have a very strong digestive system. The giraffes never all drink together. They always, because they've got their head down, so there's always one on lookout. There's always tick birds about to keep the ticks off the giraffe. Some giraffes have different markings, and you see this is a light colored one and this is darker, more difficult to see in the tree. This is a hyena, and they can be quite dangerous, especially if they come across you at night. And this is a black-backed jackal. Here we came across a lion kill, and you can see the lions in the middle of the picture, and all the other predators are gathering around waiting for their turn. Also the vultures are waiting, but as soon as the lions have finished with the kill, they will all move in to get their share. After the kill, the lions attract flies because of the blood still around their face. Then, of course, are the young lions, which the female lion usually takes care of. Mostly, they spend a lot of their time sleeping. The big male lion comes along, and he takes over, and he runs the show for a while. And when the lions have finished eating, they get up to this, and then they rest. In some areas there's a certain type of lion that sleeps in the trees. Not all lions do this, but some do. One day we were out game viewing, and we came across this cheetah sitting in the grass looking round. It seemed very interested in what was going on around, and then we saw circling around behind us, and it was eyeing us up very attentively, and then we saw in the grass that she actually had some young close by with her. Gradually the young came towards our vehicle, and they actually came in underneath looking at us as they went. Then the female jumped up on the hood of our vehicle and sat there and looked at us as though to say we're all in this together. She looked around, and we were fascinated to see her so close. She looked at us and we looked at her. We all had a nice rest, and then eventually she jumped down off the hood, took our young and left. These are hunting dogs that hunt in packs and aren't seen very often. They're very ferocious animals. And then there's the buffalo, which also are very ferocious. It's very dangerous to be out of your vehicle and to be trapped by a buffalo, because they'll gore you to death in short order. The other great attraction in the game parks are the elephants. The elephants go in herds, and they are such fascinating animals to watch. This is an old tusker that we saw many years ago. We were on our way to the camp one night when we saw this fellow coming out of the sunset. And then there's the rhinoceros with their very precious horn that the poachers love to get. They are very well protected, but there's not many of them left in the wild. Next, we've got the hippopotamus that gather by the water's edge. And again, they're quite dangerous. If you get trapped between them and the water, they can be dangerous. Here are hippos at the water's edge with flamingos in the background. Here we've got something under the water that we can't see what it is, but gradually there's a stirring, and first of all, two eyes appear, and then two ears, and a head, and up comes a hippo. Here's a hippo and a crocodile sharing the water. Now we've got part of the Great Serengeti migration, where the animals approach the river to cross, and down below the crocodiles are laying in wait. The crocodiles wait for up to 3 weeks ahead of the migration, and when they hear the rumble of the game approaching, they know that they will soon get their feast. Another attraction of the game parks is the wide variety of birds one can see. There are birds of all types, large and small. Lots of vultures who keep the park clean, and they are the great scavengers. Besides that, there are the attractive small birds. These, the purple-chested roller, they are very attractive, and various other types that are just a joy to observe. Ostriches running across the plain. This is interesting because they are such huge, large birds, and yet their chicks are so small. Flamingos take off in a flash of color. And weaver birds build their nests by the water. The weaver bird is an interesting species because the male will build up to 7 nests and hope that he can attract a female. It's fascinating to watch because about 4 o'clock every afternoon, this is when the nests go on display. There are all sorts of nests. These are stork's nests. And this is another type of nest. And then this is a condominium. This is multitude of nests all in one batch. So then there are chameleons, and they have the ability to change their colour, camouflage against the background. They also have this strange walk. Here you see the chameleon is going into the undergrowth and he's changed his colour. Chameleons have a tail that they can use to hang from branches. They can also rotate their eyes through 180 degrees, independent of each other. It's fascinating to watch a chameleon stalk, slap his tongue out, pick an insect off the branch, and devour it. This is a dung beetle that gets the elephant droppings and rolls it into a ball and rolls it away and buries it and lays an egg on it. There are lots of lizards of all different types. Lizards can, when pursued, can drop part of their tail to distract the pursuer. One of the touristy things to do in the Serengeti is to go for a balloon ride. First of all, the balloon is blown up with a fan to get the envelope blown up, and then the flame is burned to heat the air inside to make the balloon. The tourists climb into the basket, and before long the pilot fires up the flame and the balloon takes off. It's pleasant drifting along. As long as the flame is not being burned, it's very peaceful and quiet. The views are nice, but it's not necessarily easy to find, to see game from the air. A couple of tourists with all their cameras. Some Maasai villages down below, they're the only people who are allowed to live in the park. After landing, it's champagne drinks all around before driving to where a table has been set up for breakfast. Very touristy. And then there's work to be done sometimes. Here we're in the process of laying a pipe across a bay to pipe natural gas. It was a very delicate operation because it was through a marine park. The concrete coated pipes were attached to a plastic pipe which was filled with compressed air to make the whole thing float. Then the pipe was dragged by a tug with a cable around these pulleys. On land, a trench was dug and the pipe was buried. It went on for quite a long way across the countryside. The trenches were dug by manual labour for the main part, both men and women. Here Moore is doing her checks of the equipment, and wherever we cut down trees, the local ladies would come along to take the branches to make charcoal. And they carry the branches away on their heads. I had a security guard with me all the time, and it was always lots of fun, especially when they were doing changeover from one guard to another. We had a lot of fun. Cashew nuts are a great product in this part of the world, and here kids are trying to sell us cashew nuts. There was a plant close by, and this is where the cashew nuts were processed and then shipped to India, and there were 6,000 women working in the plant. Here are the women leaving the plant after their shift. The colours in Africa are beautiful wherever you look.